G'day, I'm Ash, welcome back to Tank Mechanic Simulator. This time we're checking out the second episode of the Sherman DLC. And while it would be particularly interesting to also check out the Calliope or Calliope, which is in the paint room here, I don't think we'll do that one just yet. Or the Jumbo out in the other corner. Starting off, in the last episode, we repaired the early version Sherman, and now we're going for the M4 Sherman mid-production variant, which also has the D-Day snorkels on the back. So, you know, let's have a bunch of fun today as we grind away and we'll have a bunch of fun. So, first thing we're going to do is not start grinding away and hacking at the paint. First of all, let's move our modules out, and that way we can work on them independently. And, you know what, I might also work on this one a little bit as well. Actually, no, I don't know. We'll also put the turret out because we can, and the engine out because we'll start this one and go through the process of restoring that one as well, probably in the next episode. Anyway, getting ahead of myself now because then we really need to take care of this engine. Push rods are a bit of a pain pulling these out. But it is fascinating restoring an aviation engine that then has a massive, massive clutch that then turns into, and I just always have a habit of accidentally clicking on the engine stand frame. And we're basically going to outsource most of the repairs for this particular, well, job here. We've got plenty of money to do so. This is the mode that I was looking for. Now we can get rid of all the push rods effectively and we're left with just a bare hull. There isn't anything else to the engine. I couldn't be bothered trying to go and scrap several other Shermans in order to figure out what was left and try and repair one of these engines. But having done them once already, yeah, it is becoming to be a little repetitive. Granted, that's what you get when you have a DLC that is filled with Shermans. Maybe next time they'll fill it up with some other variants of, you know, vehicles. Anyway, we're going to go straight into a time lapse now, because I hate bogies. And part of the hating and my hatred of bogies is just basically, oh, they're so time consuming. And the original file length for this video, the full recording, well, it's about an hour and 20 minutes, and I've had to condense that down into 30 minutes. So you can appreciate the amount of work it actually takes to get one of these fully restored. Granted, in the real world, it would probably take you a couple of weeks, depending on the severity, or even half a year to 2 to 3, even 10 years, depending on the state of a vehicle like this. In a restoration process, as I say in every single Tank Mechanic Simulator video, you start by stripping it all down. You then sort what you've got. And you obviously take pictures and document everything you possibly can before that stage, and then you just continue that process as you slowly restore parts until, you know, eventually you hit a point where you've got half a vehicle, or you've got a third of a vehicle done, or you've just isolating areas and restoring those parts and then moving on to other different projects. It really just depends. And I really think the M4 Sherman is underrepresented in terms of its importance in World War II. As a land-lease vehicle, it helped major parts of nations and opened up areas for vehicle combat. And versing, you know, stuff like, well, you know, the poster boys, your Tigers and your Panzer IVs and your T-34s and your IS-2s, etc., etc. Sherman is one of those vehicles which was just there and had an incredibly good crew success and survival rate due to the fact that this vehicle, while it may not have been the best engineering-wise, it happened to be the most versatile vehicle that you could happen upon because it was a very, very dependable, very reliable, very hardy and one of the best vehicles you could possibly get. Spring-loaded hatches are one of the things that the Sherman has that allows for crew survival rates to be higher than other comparative vehicles. And that's important, because you don't want to lose the crew if you lose the tank. You would rather just replace the tank. And you may have noticed on the hull of this particular vehicle, it's got massive hooks. Right? So its ease of access for loading in and out of cargo and out of vessels is easier. So able to transport a vehicle like this gets better when you have, well, the ability to transport this vehicle all over the world and have it perform in every single combat theatre known to existence. Which is quite fascinating because this particular version, the mid-production, is fitted with the D-Day snorkels, which means that this is a vehicle that was designed and built to help infantry landings in the Pacific and being unloaded on landing craft and various other things and do deep wading. Now, the last uses of these particular tanks were the first arrival with the Marines. They didn't get the latest version of the Shermans in 1944, but they did use these extensively. The Canadians used them, the British used them, Australians we tested, well, at least a variant of the M4. I believe it was the M4A3, though. Even the Swedish got their hands on them. Finland had some. The Germans had captured variants, even the 17-pounder variants, the Firefly variants of the Shermans they even had. So, yeah, look, a very versatile vehicle used in China, used in the Pacific Theatre. And after the war, Yugoslavia and Israel then went on to modify some of the most unique styles and variants of this particular vehicles, which just goes to show how versatile the chassis was. Granted, it's very tall. It's probably its weakness of this particular vehicle is just that it's really, really quite tall. And now we move on to the hull. The turret is basically done exterior and interior wise for derusting and painting and priming. It's time to get the time lapse on because I hate bogies and I hate undoing and doing track-based stuff. But the other thing that was a little bit of a gripe is the way that I do restoration. When you go to click on parts, sometimes it sends you into this interior view, and sometimes you don't really want to see the interior view. You'd rather do everything on the exterior. But yeah, look, we're basically down to bare metal now, and it's time to prime it. I'm just taking a look at everything because you only get one shot at looking at everything here. There are a couple of things I have missed, like that horn. But for the most part, we're just going to apply the old primer. Just switch modes there. Give it the old red flick, and then give it its traditional green coat of paint, because it is a military vehicle. Yeah. Alright. I think it's time to outside repairs. Get all our parts in, and then just fill the absolute living daylights out of the turret. Components, box lids for everything, the fans, some of the linkages and bolts that pertain to the exterior and the interior, double checking everything, making sure that I have every single bolt in the correct condition, because it is impossible to see sometimes. Alright, turret's now done, basically. Engine time. This is my favourite part of the tank mechanics simulator, is doing the engine. Honestly, this is the heart of a armoured vehicle, and this is what makes it go, this is what drives all the systems. And it being an aircraft engine, this is about as close as I can get to plane mechanic simulator, or is it aircraft mechanic simulator, which, again, the developers tended to leave and then basically ruin the game with a couple of their updates, so I haven't touched it since. It's where you've got the Tiger Moth, you've got the Beaufort, you've got it's Tiger Moth, Hurricane, Spitfire, and I think you get a Mosquito in the later half as well. Anyhow, we're going to install all the push rods, and we're going to go around and just try and install them as quickly as we can. Again, just a painful, just to try and go through and do this. The difference between this and Plane Mechanics Simulator, though, is that, well, you can just put the parts anywhere. This game tells you where to put the parts, whereas in other games, like Car Mechanics Simulator, you kind of have to have a little bit of knowledge on how to restore a vehicle or how to effectively maintain or do vehicle maintenance. So there's that. And you've got to make sure things are in the right area and condition, because the game doesn't tell you which orientation is correct. You just got to figure it out. And as we can see here, as I'm installing the massive cooling apparatus for the actual engine. All the timing plates, the back plates, the diffusers, which again don't really look quite correct, but it does the job. Normally you'd put the pistons on before putting this Holland's Eye Stellar assembly together, and this assembly basically holds your oil pumps, your magnetos, your generators, your various other different things, and of course your fuel pump, which is nice, but yeah. I don't know why I've put the crankcase and some of the other bits and pieces in first. I just thought, oh, let's just do all that this way, and then you obviously put your housings for the cylinders themselves. What you do is you put the housings on first, and then you put the pistons in through the crankcases. But again, just different, because a lot of those parts would come apart, and then you'd be able to work on them individually, because there's valve gears, there's gaskets, there's a whole heap of different things you actually have to consider when looking at a engine that's been converted to run on a tank. And now I'm going to do the valves and the valve covers and everything else. Oh, you know what? I'm just going to skip ahead. Righto, the engine has been completed. We are now turret interior and exterior done. We have completed the engine, I guess, and now it's just time to run through the base hull of the actual vehicle itself and run through and get everything done and installed, particularly when it comes to suspension and some of the parts of the outside of this vehicle. I can't stand doing leaf springs and various other bogies and doing all this kind of stuff. This is probably my most hated part of Tank Mechanic Simulator. I just don't enjoy doing this kind of thing. Having to put all the sprockets in, bogie levers, and all the various other bits and pieces and road wheels and into overlapping in different styles and just, yeah, brackets and little pins. It does get quite tedious, but it is something that needs to be done. So, you know, we're going to get it done. Otherwise, I'm going to spare you the other side of the vehicle when I get to that, when I do the next stage of that running gear. But usually, you know, tanks are big objects to try and maintain, and I'm not sure. I'd like to own a Sherman. I think a Sherman would be a good kind of universal tank to have. Anyway, I'll be putting this in my museum to then get the achievement for it, but I'll also need to put this in the warehouse. And I wish there was more space in the museum. Wish we had a dedicated building for that one. Most of my money and most of my income at the moment comes from completing jobs that are small jobs, and then the income from the direct amount of people coming through the doors into the little museum I have. And I have a lot of just German vehicles in that sort of lot. Anyhow, the other major criticism I have of this game is just the lack of space you have to actually maintain and look at other vehicles. I've missed 2 of the periscope covers. We're going to restore those later. Put on the driver's hat. Again, it would be nice to have a mini game where you actually have to control a turret or control the... What I mean by that is actually lifting up the turret and lifting out the engine and actually having to lift the components out with a crane or an engine hoist or something like that, and actually having to use the engine pit. I don't use that enough. You know, there's a lot of things and just a lot of equipment that could be utilized in a better format. So look, I've got all the interior here. It's all glowing in a whitish tinge. When you complete a part, put in a part, it'll then put overlay over basically the existing parts, and so you get this weird thing where, yeah, okay, I can basically restore the Holland's Eye vehicle, but not have every sort of part in it yet, because I've accidentally put another part over the other top. So, be interesting to see if they change that mechanic later down the line. But again, for what it is, this game is still pretty fun, and I enjoy it to bits. So, have another montage and a bit of fastness, because we've got another set of things and interior things to do, so I'm going to save you from that. Here we are installing all the gearbox, and this floating gearbox makes me a bit uneasy. You're sort of just assembling it into the final drive and everything, and just hoping that it just sits there and doesn't float or go away, get done by gravity. Finally get some of the outer sheaths and some of the other parts, and this is probably the most interesting transmission work. There you go, the outer housing that usually would come off all in one piece. The road wheels on, go and put some of the other covers, and that's about done it with the sprocket wheels themselves. And we should be finished the tracks about now. So, just a couple more things on the interior. We've got the gearboxes and some of the tunnels, as well as the driver's seat and some of the steering wheels. There's also some of the other turning gears, and this thing just gets bigger and bigger and bigger as time goes by. There it is, the synchro mesh, the other gear collars, some of the different bits and pieces. And attaching it to the block on the front. Again, engine in the back, long shaft down the middle, a gearbox that can take an aviation engine, and then you also have a transmission to go with it that also diverts that power. Alright, we should be done about now. We have a couple of bits and springs to go. Well, I should say some of the accessories around the mudguards, various sideboards, and a couple of smaller pieces, but outside of that, we're 95% complete. So basically, after an hour and a half of running around, clicking on things, this is what we've got. Now we're basically done. Put in the side guards and the other track pieces, and wow, what a vehicle. I don't know much about the Snorkel vehicles. They are amphibious landing sorts, and I presume that they were used with the US Marines. I don't know if they were used predominantly outside of their role. Did they get modified into regular Shermans back in a workshop somewhere after D-Day / out in the field? But Pacific Theatre, these were known to be heavy tanks comparatively to the Japanese tanks, although there were ways that they dealt with these things. So, yeah, Sherman is a fantastic vehicle, and with that last front mudguard and a couple of other smaller pieces, we're ready for the paint room. Done. Okay, now I was going to make mine a German Sherman, but we're going to go to colour swatches. We're just going to have a bit of a play around. Again, I'm disappointed there isn't really more of a camouflage or unique camouflages all ready to go for these machines. Oh, the snow does look a bit particularly yucky. I'm going to go with something typically American and just scale it down just a bit. I'm trying to find that's more of a panther. That works. If we go to the scale, we're going to just scale it up. Actually, we'll scale it down to about there. I just want to know what pink looks like. Oh, yeah, no, that doesn't definitely go. What about green? What, Pink Panther? Yeah, that works lovely. I'm sure that everybody will be pleased to see that. Like, don't get me wrong, I like pink tanks, but it has to be a T-34-85 and it has to be in the central part of London. Yeah, there looks pretty good. Honestly, we're not going to put any decals or any decals on the vehicle, because why the hell would you do that? And now we're going to go put this vehicle inside of the museum just to get the slot. So as you can see, I've got various other vehicles. I have one slot for this particular purpose. There it is, the Steam achievement. And now I guess we're going to go see what it looks like in the warehouse with our other finished Sherman. So here's our first Sherman, and if we turn back around, here is our later production variant. Slightly different camouflage. Again, massive snorkels on the back. Yeah, it looks quite cool seeing these two side by side, or facing each other, I should say. And you can really tell the differences in the cast hull armor and the way that these vehicles sort of look. So again, it'd be cool to sort of see the history between these vehicles at a later point, but you'll have to wait until the next episode when we've got at least 3 more Shermans to fill in. So that's going to be fun. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. My name is Ash, and I'll catch you next one. Bye-bye.